see if it wants me to join audio. Hold on a second.
Kate Miller.
What's that?
Kate Miller.
Oh.
There she is.
The franchise agreement. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, 5 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Mary Ann, will you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. Oops, sorry, Zach.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right.
Thanks.
First up, we have some minutes.
Okay. I will make a motion to accept the June 27th non-public meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Follow that with another motion to accept the June 27th regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. The Select Board will meet on the following dates: Monday, July 25th, and Monday, August 8th, and the 29th. Just as a point of information, both Bill and Mary Ann will not be available on the 25th, so just the three of us, and I will not be available on the 8th. So Bill, you'll have to run the 8th meeting.
Okay. Give it a shot.
All meetings will be held upstairs in Town Hall and will be held by Zoom. Zoom information can be found on the town's website at plymouth-nh.org. Citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify the Town Hall before 12 p.m. the Friday before the scheduled meeting. No comments from me, but we have an appointment, or I guess a reappointment. Looks like a reappointment for Ina Ahern to the Conservation Commission. No accompanying letter? It's the second page. Sorry. Let me read that real quick. Dear Office of the Select Board, this letter is to request renewal of my appointment to serve on the Plymouth Conservation Commission as an alternate member. I believe my current appointment is due to expire in September. The Conservation Commission has discussed this and recommends my reappointment. Wow, usually we get these after they've expired rather than before. I like it.
I move that we reappoint Ina Ahern as an alternate to the Conservation Commission.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Just want to at least communicate the fact that she's a very, really good tie into the high school. And she generally has technically able kids that are able to, help out on projects that they do, to include GIS work. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, she's very helpful.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? In that your way. In terms of correspondence, I don't have anything explicitly on the agenda, but there were a couple things this week. Chief sent us a correspondence you had. Was that with DOT? I didn't see the from on that.
Yeah, it's whoever's in charge of the lining and striping for DOT.
Yeah, so just repeating for Colleen's purposes, you reached out to DOT about the stripes in the roundabout. Effectively, they said, sorry, nothing we are going to do about it.
They said any means that they could do to erase it really won't help anything. If they paint over black, the black wears off faster than the yellow, and then we see yellow again. They said if they try to grind it, it's more of a safety concern for motorcycles, so we can't do that. So he says the best practice right now is just wait until it wears off. But it was a mistake.
So that'll be annoying for years to come.
Can they burn it? Isn't it flammable, or?
I don't know. That was his response.
Get out there with your flamethrower.
Yeah.
We've seen a fair number of comments. Who was it at the DOT you talked to?
I'm not sure his name. Whoever's in charge of lining and striping.
Oh, I'd like to know his name. You didn't have any discussion regarding the Smith Bridge intersection with him?
I did not.
Well,
I know Kathy has had some conversations with.
I wrote a letter to DOT and told them, asked them if they would move it up to the beginning of the next 10-year plan before we have a fatality.
that was the other correspondence item I wanted to mention. There's a letter in our box that Representative Smith wrote to the DOT as well, advocating pretty heavily for moving that project up. Thought her letter was nice. It was long and very detailed. And she also made the point of, like, do we really have to wait for a fatality before we fix this intersection that we know is a problem?
I'd like to see him get out there with a striping crew and correct
Correct the striping.
correct the passing line they got going through the intersection. And they also have a pedestrian path that's about 2 feet wide in between the Armco and the white line.
Do we know when the last time that road was striped?
I don't
It's not recent, right?
Hasn't been for a while.
Is that a request we can make, or?
We can ask them. I think they have been asked in the past, and they were going to send somebody out to look at it, so I can ask again.
It's not a matter of striping though, so it's a matter of agreeing with the fact that they, should put a no passing zone out there. And I don't think they agreed to it last time we asked them,
Yeah.
so. And also, I mean, they were contemplating putting Jersey barriers out there too, or a sign saying no left or left turn, excuse me. So then none of those have really kind of proceeded.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, so continued striping issues,
Done.
prioritization issues, et cetera. Any other comments on that topic? I can. The other piece of correspondence we had was around the beautification committee and the roundabout. I just want to thank Kathy for advocating for the beautification committee and again getting us a verbal go-ahead there. It was looking like we were going to be stuck with wood chips for another year, but it sounds like that group is now got an unofficial but official verbal go-ahead, and we'll get the paperwork done after. So thank you for pushing. On to new business. We have attorney Kate Miller to talk with us about the cable company franchise agreement.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Hello for agreeing to meet. It's a beautiful day, and I'm sure it's gorgeous up in Plymouth. It's a little warm down here. I'm going to sort of run through quickly the existing franchise agreement and kind of what's involved with it. I know that Mr. Bolton was in this rodeo the last time we went around and negotiated the current franchise agreement. The franchise agreement is with Charter Communications, who do business as Spectrum. That's kind of their public-facing name. And it's a franchise agreement for 8 years, which is set to expire in November. The original agreement was, we first had Adelphia for your cable operator. That switched over maybe 18 years ago or so. And the folks who took over were Time Warner. Charter took over from Time Warner in 2018. So we're in an ever consolidating world of cable TV companies. And that's been one of the sources of frustration for a lot of municipalities, is that even though cable companies are not legal monopolies, they're not granted an exclusive area in which they operate the way, say an electric company does. They are economically de facto monopolies because often there's very little competition, especially in smaller communities, from other cable TV companies. So what we have is a non-exclusive franchise with Charter, we negotiated the last time around with two other of your neighbors as part of a little consortium, Holderness and Ashland. Holderness ended up with a longer term for their franchise, so they're not up for renewal just yet, and Ashland is kind of going a different route. In turn, they had already expired their franchise agreement, and their town administrator is kind of taking a different tack. So although it's may not be a franchise agreement that seems terrific to us sitting here today, we have a lot of limitations on what we can negotiate over, and that can be frustrating for our constituents. So some of the things that people are most frustrated about are the channel selections and the prices. So the way things are packaged into tiers and how much it costs. The other thing that can be frustrating is that by law, municipalities only have jurisdiction over the cable TV portion of Charter's business, even though they may offer internet service and voice over internet protocol telephone over the same facilities in your public right of way. Your jurisdiction for the franchise only covers the cable TV sliver of that. You've probably heard about folks switching away from traditional cable TV, cutting the cord, as it were, and looking to watch more video content over internet. And that is definitely a trend. When your cable company is your primary internet service provider, you know, that can be challenging if your cable company doesn't reach all the houses and businesses in town. So there is a density requirement for the expansion of the system in Plymouth, and my understanding is that has been a source of frustration with some residents who are not getting service. The density requirement is 15 homes per mile, and they will kick in a small amount towards the cost of expansion beyond that. Building out a cable system is pretty expensive these days. It's generally around $20,000 per mile to get the facilities up on the poles and extended. So cable companies are often uninterested in stretching beyond their legal requirements. In terms of, you know, could we negotiate for a lower density requirement? We could. I think it's very unlikely that Charter would agree to that. 15 homes per mile is actually relatively good. In some communities, it's 20, and in others, it's even higher. So it may not seem like a great number, but it's better than what many other communities have. One point that I'll talk a little bit more about later is you may be getting some video competition that may be very robust from the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative. So they have sent a letter to the town saying, we're interested in using some of those broadband funds from the COVID emergency money to build out broadband infrastructure over our existing facilities. So lucky Plymouth is going to be the hub for the Grafton area build out. So you're likely to get that first. So what they will provide is internet service. It won't be cable TV service. And for that reason, they won't need a separate franchise from the town in order to provide those services. If you do require that anyone who's attached to your poles get a permit or license from the town, not just a company that wants to plant a pole or put a conduit in the public right-of-way, but someone who's attaching to your poles, then the electric cooperative might need to get an additional license from the town. But it won't be a franchise agreement due to the sort of vagaries of the way the law has evolved, with internet services not being considered cable TV services. Right now, the franchise agreement requires that the company provide cable TV service in the town. There's nothing about the telephone or internet service in the franchise agreement because that's not part of our jurisdiction. So even though they provide it, it's not covered. It's a non-exclusive franchise, although we haven't seen much in the way of competition. We're getting a little bit. Breeze Line is moving into some communities. They're the former MetroCast in the Lakes region, and Comcast is moving into some communities up in this area. But I doubt that they would move as far afield as Plymouth. So it's possible, but I think unlikely. Other of the requirements under the current franchise agreement are to provide free cable TV services at a basic tier level to 9 of your public buildings. And I believe your school and public buildings are still using those services. Since the time that we did this franchise agreement 8 years ago, the FCC has got a new rule that the free services are considered in-kind contributions and their value is counted towards the franchise fees that are paid. Currently, Plymouth gets 5% of the gross revenue from the operation of the cable system in the form of franchise fees paid to the town. So you get that on a regular basis. And if the value of the services, the marginal cost to Charter to provide those free cable TV services is factored in, there would probably be an offset to those franchise fees. That we're in a weird situation where the FCC issued this rule in 2019. There was some litigation. The federal courts upheld it, but said it's the marginal cost to the cable company to provide those services that we consider to be what has to be offset against the franchise fees. So they can't use the retail rate, what it would cost to provide those free services if they were selling those. Because that's not what actually it costs them to do that. And I think because cable companies have been very reluctant to tell the world how much it costs to provide cable TV services, they've been slow to non-compliant with starting to implement that rule. So that is likely to be part of any new agreement that we do, but I'm not sure when they will choose to implement that. The company also provides 2 local access channels, and I believe we've got our friendly manager is monitoring this. Thank you very much, Dan. And there are several live programming locations, the Town Hall and then the Pease Library. Initially, in this franchise agreement, there was a modest capital support payment of $5,300 that was made, I think, in either 2014 or early 2015. And the definition that we use for your franchise fees to define the gross revenue is very broad. So you're pretty much maxed out in terms of the franchise fees, and those may be trimmed back if the company decides to implement that rule that the FCC is insisting on. At this point, we worked really hard with that consortium 8 years ago to try to get the best possible deal we could. And since that time, first Time Warner and now Spectrum has been very unwilling to agree to terms similar to the ones that are in your current franchise agreement. Again, don't want to tell you this franchise agreement is the greatest thing in the world, but it's the best that can be achieved under the circumstances. And because of that, I'd recommend that rather than doing a complete rewrite of the franchise agreement to address, a couple issues possibly with the free services, extend it out a few years, instead we look to do an amendment, keep the existing terms. I think a negotiation would be mostly us trying to defend and retain the existing terms we have, and it would all be about Charter trying to, gain ground and the town to lose ground. So both from a sort of efficiency of cost perspective and also from a sort of strategic perspective, I think we might be better off to do an amendment. You might want to know, well, do we have to renew this franchise agreement or not? And the answer is it's very difficult to deny renewal to a cable TV company if they are not in compliance with the existing franchise agreement. That's grounds for not allowing them to renew the franchise if they can't bring themselves into compliance. The other ground is if they propose a renewal franchise agreement that's not reasonable under the circumstances. The challenge with that is that they basically get to define what's reasonable under the circumstances, and that can include economic factors. So if they wanted to boost the homes per mile density requirement from 15 to 40, they might say that's our standard, that's what we offer all over the country. That would then be automatically considered reasonable under the circumstances. So I don't think at this point, from the conversation I had with a couple of the select board members and with Dan, that there are areas of glaring non-compliance. But what I'd recommend is that we do some audit questions to the company to just test and make sure that they really are in compliance with all the things they're supposed to be doing. And I recommend that for two reasons. One is if there are things they have not done properly. So for instance, if they were underpaying your franchise fees or something else, this would be the time to address it before we move on to either a new agreement or an amendment, because we've got their attention and they basically have to work with the town. The other reason is that if there is an area where they're not in compliance and they can't or they don't want to bring themselves into compliance, that gives us some bargaining leverage we might not otherwise have. And it might allow the town to be able to gain some other things that it might wish to have. So the audit questions are useful, I think, both to make sure there isn't some problem that we aren't particularly aware of, just check on all those things. And then secondly, don't leave any possible bargaining leverage on the table. So if there are things that need to be addressed, pick those up. We can put those together. We would send a copy to your folks, to the town manager, and other folks in the town to have them prepare what answers they have to the questions, and then we'll kind of cross-check against what charter provides. Their charter has been fairly cooperative in responding to audit questions, although it refuses to answer the question about those in-kind cable TV services provided free to public locations and how much the marginal cost is. What would the town be looking at in terms of an offset to the franchise fees? They just don't answer. So, and I have to say that's across the board. None of the cable companies in New Hampshire where we've asked that question have responded to it. So I think that's probably our first step. And then depending on how that goes, we see if it makes most sense to recommend an amendment to the current franchise. Something that Comcast is agreeing to in its communities and BreezeLine is agreeing to in its communities on sort of a slow rollout is to get one at least of the local access channels in high definition. So I can't remember from our conversations previously whether the town is currently recording in high def. If you're streaming out on the internet, you may already be doing that. If you're not, then switching to high definition, there would be a cost for upgrading equipment, and often the cable company looks for the community providing the cost to upgrade equipment at their head end. Technically, anything that is an obligation of the cable company required by the franchise can be billed back to the subscribers. So Comcast is telling us it's a cost of about $20,000 for upgrading the equipment at the head end. I don't know because Charter so far hasn't agreed to do a high definition local access channel. So I'm not sure what they would say, but that's something to ponder if it's something that you would want. So that is kind of a quick zip through where we are and what I suggest we do for our next couple of steps. Are there questions from folks?
Bill and I pretty much heard this whole line.
Yep.
Anything from the other three board members?
No.
No, I think I think you were very thorough. That was a lot, and I appreciate all the detail. It's very helpful.
Okay, thanks. Shall we proceed with doing some audit questions and send those out?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay. I
Yep.
think
Looks
that's-
like that's the consensus. Yes.
It's good due diligence for the town to do that now, because if there is something that's lurking, it's good to flush it out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where we're going to go with this, but I think in the conversations about the franchise, I think it is helpful to let residents know that the co-op is planning on bringing a one gigabyte broadband system to every home that's receiving electricity.
Yeah,
And
we've had that as a topic in recent board meetings, so definitely something we're talking about.
Yeah, and it is not the same as cable TV, but for a lot of people, it may be something they're willing to switch to. And I'm hopeful that given that the co-op owns its own poles and can save money on the costs for connecting to poles, that can often be very expensive for cable companies to attach to electric or telephone companies' poles. That it may be at a price that's more affordable for some folks as well. So, all right, so we will go forth and do those audit questions, and then when they get back, we usually give cable companies 60 days to answer. We'll analyze what comes back and then report back. Should I report back to the committee that's been working on this, or would you prefer a report back to the full board?
How about just the committee?
Yeah, I think just the committee to start, and if it looks like there's anything that needs broader attention, we'll bring it to the board.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and
Yeah, that's
wish
great.
you the best
Thanks.
for your eve.
Yeah, thank you, Kate.
All righty, take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
you too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Operational metrics for police.
I need sharing on the Zoom.
Make co-host. Up right there.
Now I feel important now. I'm just going to share my entire screen. That's probably easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly show, this is the spreadsheet that I derived all the data from. I don't expect you to read this at a distance. This is partially data that came into me, and the columns on the end are derived data columns where I use the source data. So now I'm going to go into the PowerPoint here and just kind of talk about it. So some key things that I wanted to mention about Plymouth specifically. There are 3 entries in the data for Plymouth. One is just the raw data as provided. In other words, it does not include PSU officers and budget. The PSU students are counted fully towards the population of the town. Another one is Plymouth, the raw data. Basically subtract out the on-campus residents. And the third one is Plymouth, where I'm counting both the UPED, the University Police officers, and budget. And so this should give us the best fully rounded perspective. You can see where all of the different scenarios can play in. So the first metric basically is the number of calls, basically depending on which line we're talking about. The line that's basically saying how many calls came in from this constituency group divided by the total population in the town. So we see a lot of other towns here. I've highlighted the Plymouth ones in green so that they stand out.
A lot of call volume.
So we obviously, Plymouth raw, you have the same call volume. Here, I don't know if I added in the extra call volume for that, but this green number here, which included the Plymouth, the column should be a little taller. So here in the end is the Plymouth call volume based on subtracting out the students. So obviously when you subtract out the students in this particular scenario, the numbers for calls per person, so to speak, are higher. So
How did you know how many calls were student calls?
they have a separate data factor. I think it was like 9,000 from campus.
Yeah, so we could pull just Plymouth State University calls. So I think
Okay.
what we did, if you use the number.
So just ones that happen on campus.
Yeah,
Right,
they're getting.
So that doesn't subtract students who are living in calls to a residential
Right, 'cause it's
student,
hard 'cause
right?
most of the students, even if they live on campus, they all drive off campus, they all walk off campus, they all
Yes.
leave campus.
A lot of
So
that volume is Russell Street, it's,
Russell
yeah,
Street, it's Market Basket where they're shopping, it's Main Street, so.
Sure.
It is tough, but we just took an average of the 3 years for Plymouth State to get that. I think it was like 9,000.
Yeah,
calls.
somewhere in that percentage. So this line here where it's showing the Plymouth plus UPD, that should be a little taller. I don't know exactly how much.
but any way you slice it, this data shows us we're busy.
We're basically taking a lot of calls,
Yeah, very busy.
especially compared to many of our comparators. You know, we are, if you look in here, it's just kind of an oddity. Keene also has a campus.
Yeah, and they're 31,000 calls in Keene against their 22,000 population.
So
Yeah,
their volume per unit is much lower.
much lower.
But New London, which has a smaller campus, because Colby Sawyer's there, is right there with us. So there's a large degree of variability there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's just the calls per resident. Next one is, and because the Zoom bar is hovering over, I have to move it. So this is number of police to resident ratio. So basically I took the population, took the number of full-time officers, and added it to 0.5 times part-time to give a relative number that I could work with. So when you look at Plymouth here, when we're looking at Plymouth plus UPD officers and budget, we have basically one officer for every 300 and something residents. When we take just the Plymouth raw, that number is a little bit larger because we're not counting the UPD as part of our factor here. So the idea here is to give us kind of a realistic. We know that we do have a few additional officers in the town of Plymouth because of UPD. Do they cover as much? No, probably not. But they are a factor that we can't completely ignore. So it's part of the equation. So that drives up the ratio to, roughly 1 in every 575, and the actual spreadsheet has the details. Realistically, the actual number, when you factor everything all in, is probably somewhere around 500. Because we can't really take the Plymouth UPD officers and budget, or the Plymouth minus the on-campus students, any of those things completely at face value, because there's a lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
Right, when you talk about PSU, are you talking about their actual budget or their actual expenditures?
I am talking what I've been told is their budget.
Their budget, okay.
Yeah.
So even though they have 6 positions, 7 positions? They only have,
They only have
4?
4 of them filled right now.
so we basically make up the difference? Should that be considered, I guess?
Well, if they're paying us to make up the difference, then it really doesn't matter.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of things, it's like if they can't cover shifts and they're paying duties or whatever you want to call it,
Which they just started,
which they just started.
They did, but then it stopped.
right.
Well, because there's no one on campus anymore.
That's right.
They are using UNH though.
They are, okay. Yeah.
Police.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that either. So it just kind of gives you an idea of how we measure up in terms of communities here. Obviously, we don't really want the number to be too low.
Right,
We also don't want it on the other end either.
right.
So my feeling is if we kind of took the numbers that we have with the two lower end figures, and we kind of averaged it with the other one, we'd be kind of central.
Center maybe a little bit low.
Yeah, so you gotta take into account though, like, so you're looking at Camden. Well, Camden doesn't have a regional high school. They don't have the regional hub. They don't have a regional hospital.
They don't have the
They don't
businesses,
have all
yeah.
the businesses. They don't have all the banks. They don't have.
So not just the residents, but
No,
what is the
there's
what is the
lots of-
population of the town while all those businesses are full, all those
The
yeah.
traveling population that comes through Plymouth. I mean,
It's true.
all of that data as well as, I mean, this is
Just straight residents, yep.
it doesn't take into account for all of the other.
Yeah, all of the constituents that you're serving.
Exactly, yeah.
Moving along, hopefully, okay. Cost per officer was something else that we could figure out pretty easily. When we went with just the raw numbers or the Plymouth on-campus students, well, those are gonna be the same. Obviously, we're floating kind of towards the high end of the scale. But when we average in the UPD, it brings us a little bit more central. Because now we have more officers, we're covering,
But the only thing is that UPD officers don't cover all of them.
yeah.
They cover on campus.
On campus.
So this includes the dispatch budget as well?
Because not all towns had separated it,
Right.
I included, I included,
Doesn't have parking.
yeah, I included all of those things that were, some of them don't break it out as you know in the data.
But
So I was like, how can we compare if some
you-
don't?
did you include the dispatchers in that
I
calculation?
included the budget for the dispatch.
Right, but the cost, but did you divide it by the number of them?
No.
So
no,
you didn't
because
add them back
this was
in.
police officers
Or the
specifically.
revenue or
Right,
anything
because you
like
need
that.
the revenue.
Yeah, we'd have to balance it against the revenue, which would be something interesting to look at.
Yeah,
But we don't have that for all those other towns either, so.
right. Does dispatch, do we take in revenue? What's the roughly what's the revenue we
Yeah, so
take in?
we have 9 other agencies we dispatch for.
Right.
They all pay revenue.
Do you know what that roughly is?
About 300,000.
Okay, so really that 518 on that budget is only like 200 in terms of cost to us.
And the university pays for dispatch.
Yes, they do as well.
On top of their agreement, or
Part of that.
that's just wrapped up in the annual amount they pay for us. It's not line item.
Something that we want to break out later
Would be nice to, yeah.
so that we can get that analysis, so that we can figure out what next year's agreement with the campus is gonna be.
Yeah, so this cost per officer particular metric feels a little sketchy.
Yeah, it doesn't really, you can't necessarily,
It's not a true accurate.
I wouldn't come down.
It would.
but it can give us some ideas how we can drill into the data and get a little more refined with it.
I have a question. Have you ever estimated how many people come into the town to work or go to school?
I think you gotta look at like the traffic counters, you know, because most of our calls for service aren't necessarily residents. They're people that travel through, they get in accidents, or, you know, it's like that tourist community.
Yeah, I mean, they go to Walmart, they go to Hannaford's, they go to all the other businesses, and
So we tried to find like, is there a number that Market Basket, and I think Michael Fair told me, but like, how many people come to Market Basket every day? And it's a large number, and that doesn't include Walmart, Hannaford, the hospital. So the traffic volume is really large, but it's in the thousands, but I forget what he told me. I'll have to ask him.
20
Get
or
an
thir-
idea.
20 or 30,000?
Of the daily volume that comes just to Market Basket
Yeah.
is huge.
You need to put a counter on both ends of town, Tenny Mountain Highway.
At their end, yeah.
You know, when they were building that 12 Yetton Road Business Park, how many years ago? They had a count of 12,000 per day. That was,
That one way though, yeah, I think it's gotta be much higher.
I'm sure it's.
Oh, I'm sure it's higher.
Yeah, DOT has the traffic data for Tama. It's all online.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so news moving along. Another simple thing, cost per resident. So you take the population, you divide it by those other budgets, and you come up with a number. Obviously, revenues haven't been factored in because we don't have revenue data for those other towns either. But we can get it for ourselves. That if we don't have it for our comparators, it's hard to do much with it.
Yeah, we would only need it for anybody who has either dispatch or parking, right? Because otherwise,
Well, they may have other revenues.
yeah,
mean,
but you
like
could figure
fines.
like fines and tickets. I don't know. You can just assume those are somewhat standard.
Yeah, we don't know what any of them.
But dispatch, when that's adding $300,000, that's a much bigger impact.
How much do we get in fines?
So parking fines or?
No, like regular moving violation type things.
Oh, so all the traffic stuff goes, so it doesn't get back.
Oh, it
We
doesn't
don't
come
get
back
any
from
of
them.
that, yeah.
Well, that seems to be a raw deal.
Wow, that's wrong.
The only money that comes back is, tower rooms.
So open container, yeah, all that stuff.
Right, but traffic tickets doesn't come back to the town.
Right.
It's kind of a raw deal.
You don't get any brownie points or anything?
So, and anyway, this gives us a number. You can see how we compare to our comparators. You know, if you just go with the raw one, we're somewhere around $350 per resident actual cost before you think about the revenues. As you've indicated, if you count the revenues, that's probably going to come down. So that might be something that if we can get some data from the other towns, it might improve this metric to really show our true cost.
Yeah, we send some requests out, it's just, a lot of towns don't just have the time to gather all the data from every town, that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, you know, maybe we can show that it's a way of showing efficiency, and maybe if there's some kind of idea, is like, hey, we'll give you our data too.
Or we'll give you all the data we collected.
Yeah, all the data we collected or whatever.
So I know there's a couple of police agencies that gather data to see, like, you know, how many officers, there is some PDs that do combine this information, that do work really hard for it. I'll have to dig it out. It's sooner.
The nice thing is okay, we can tell people what we're looking for in advance. You know, if we want to know their budget, their revenue, the number of officers, full and part-time, if we can tell them that in advance, send them a little email or whatever, however is the most effective way to gather it, and see what we get back. Especially if we can get a larger sample size.
Also, if we can follow back up and say, and here's the data we collected, here it is online, and as you provide information, we'll update it.
Yeah.
You know, they might find that valuable in their own budget processes.
So just ideas here. I think there's one more slide here. So this is the cost per call. Obviously, we're doing a lot of calls. So here's our costs for calls relatively should be fairly low. And
It's the most expensive.
so when you're looking at all of these, Plymouth Raw, you know, we're sub 100. And there's only 2 communities that are actually lower than us for that. Even with including police, the Plymouth State Police in the numbers, you can see we're still, I will say, on the lower end, you know, of the cost. So that's something that at least comes through fairly nicely for us. Like I said, from the available data, there's only so many ways I can slice and dice it from what we have, but it gives us an idea of where we might be able to refine the metrics and maybe look for opportunities for savings.
So with the data that you collected, do you feel that we're understaffed?
As far as staffing, I have to go back.
I mean, I when I look at this, I'd be tempted to try to find some other towns that have closer call numbers to us.
Yeah, so.
You know, when you look at this, it's only, in this entire list, it's only Keene that's above us, and then the next closest below is almost a third less.
Yeah, there's just so many factors. It's so hard to have a regional hospital,
Yeah,
a high school, a market basket, a university.
Downtown area that has.
Walmart, downtown.
And
yeah,
parking's a big
absolutely.
thing. There's not a lot of communities that have parking, you know, their own like parking division, their enforcement officer.
A regional dispatch center that we oversee at the PD, not a regional dispatch center that's overseen
Right.
by, not the police department.
Because I look at some of these and they do have like, Franklin does have dispatch, but it's for Franklin and maybe one other community. Belmont only dispatches for themselves for 8 hours and then they go to the county dispatch. So, and they don't have parking. So some of these towns just don't have, you know, we included them, but it's gonna be really difficult to find the ones that are close to us.
Yeah.
'Cause we are unique and it.
I'd be really interested to see, like, what's in terms of call volume, what's a Littleton look like, a Lebanon,
Lebanon's a city, so it's
Lebanon
probably
might be
much more, right? But Keene's a city, and, you know, Keene's numbers aren't so different than yours.
Right.
Yeah, it's a,
Population-wise, you're absolutely right. Like, so just, I'd be interested to see some others that are dealing with similar call volumes.
Yeah. Yeah, we did some research, and there's a couple of ways that people use to determine if an agency has enough people or needs more. You know, we looked at it, and upwards to like maybe 19 officers is probably for our call volume would be adequate, and that's 19 working officers. That doesn't mean it's the chief or deputy chief going out and handling calls every
Right.
day. So, I mean, the data that we looked at.
Of course, you start to move in that direction, and that cost per resident starts to,
yeah, and that's one of those things you kind of have,
But
that's
you
why
gotta look
looking
at
at
the
data.
calls for service per officer too, right? So it's like a Manchester. They're big, busy, but the
Mhm.
calls for service per officer is low. Okay, so I'm at here, call for service per officer is high. So burnout rate is really, really high.
right,
So those are the things you gotta outweigh.
absolutely, yeah.
Right, and I would like to run the numbers and see, you know, get the revenue from dispatch, from parking, because I know parking was up this year, you know, and look at some of the revenues that we get back and see where that brings us down to and some of the costs.
You just mentioned a metric that, Ted, you didn't put in your graphs that I think would be really useful, which is calls per officer. So if you're
So
thinking
we
about
did do that.
burnout
I know
of your
we sent
staff
it.
and that kind of
I
thing.
don't know who it was sent to, but I know we did send it, so we did do, you know, at least for us, like the accepted practices, you can do the basic, you know, the per capita, which is the really basic numbers per resident. But we actually did break it down for the calls for service and how many calls for service our average is and how many that our officers handle. Because that doesn't necessarily include like proactive stuff. We want them to go out and do proactive car stops on a road where there's speeding complaints.
Mhm.
That doesn't necessarily include that. Calls for service are gonna be calls that they're getting dispatched to and called to.
Mhm.
So, you know, even though we had calls for service, which is the workload,
I can probably get,
find it?
well, I have the data, the spreadsheet here. The problem is that when I'm sharing Zoom,
Everything's slow?
no, it hides things from me because underneath,
Oh, underneath the little,
yeah, I have to slide over. And I can add a new column here. And so we could get calls per officer. And equals this divided by this plus this 0.5 times excuse me for doing this on the fly. Hopefully not making a mistake.
Live spreadsheet skills.
And so I can change this from a dollar sign. Because it's not money, it's a number. And then sort largest to smallest.
You want to give us a couple zoom
Yeah, yeah.
levels on that? I would just be curious to see what we're looking at there.
So,
Might need a couple more than that.
hold on a second, let me change these to green coloring so that Plymouth jumps out to build Plymouth so you know what we're talking about. Well, I bet, is that big enough?
Yeah, that's, well, I mean, it's big enough to say that Plymouth drops down to the bottom there, right? The calls per officer that we're dealing with are substantially higher than these other comparator locations.
And that's the data that we really look at, is that it's pretty.
And now
Well, it's certainly,
it's frozen.
it's what you've been saying, you know, it's what you were saying, it's what the previous chief was saying, and, you know, here's some data that says that that's true.
And now my,
And it only
Excel
worsens
is frozen.
when we're down, so like we are now, when PSU's down officers, so it just,
Yeah.
it adds more.
Because that divisor's even worse, and so now, instead of dealing-
Spots we have, but how many officers do we actually have?
you're an officer, instead of dealing with 1,000 calls a year, now you're dealing with 1,200.
And
And
our detectives are dealing with, you know, felony little stuff, so they're not going and answering day-to-day calls.
yeah, they're not doing service calls at all.
Right, so then it breaks it down to even a smaller group, and those numbers will go up.
Interesting.
Have you ever looked at Franklin to take them on for dispatch?
Well, Franklin has their own regional staff.
Right, but you're gonna save them money.
We would have to get more employees. And we'd have to build out our radio system even further, so I mean, it's like costly.
What was your question? I missed what you
Pick
said.
up Franklin as far as to take over the dispatch.
That would be busy.
Oh.
Right, they dispatch for Bristol, which is another.
Oh, they do?
Really
Yeah,
busy.
Franklin.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and,
Andover.
Andover, Alexandria, Danbury, I think they dispatch like 7. So it would be busy.
Yeah.
So, this number 12, that's your total complement, right?
That's the full-time positions we have as 12, yeah.
And you take 2 of your detectives out of that, you got 10.
Right, and then the chief and myself, obviously, we're doing administrative stuff a lot.
So now you're down to 8.
And then we're, and SRO, that's in the school.
Student resource officers. Now you're down to 7.
Then
So
we're
you have
out of position.
20. Yeah, so you're 6. You have 27,000 calls that 6 people are dealing
We
with.
gotta find a way to build that up.
Yeah.
That's extremely concerning from mental health personnel and burnout.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah, it
crazy
turns out
workload.
quick. Especially when you're working in a town nearby.
That does only like 700.
Exactly. So I mean, the data's there to show that, you know, calls for service for officers.
All right, 700. That's, you know, that means you're going to be doing 3 or 4 calls a shift as opposed to what we're doing, which is a dozen.
And some of those calls can be very serious calls that take several days to work on a case, but
Sure.
when you're working on those cases, you're getting more cases on top of that.
So do we have some kind of aggregate data that shows us the type of calls that are typically being handled?
So I don't think they do, so at least in the industry, they say 30 to 45 minutes for a call is like the average time you're gonna spend. Because a call for service could be a dog complaint that maybe takes you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or it could be a motor vehicle accident that takes you 2 hours. So they kind of just give you like the average.
Well, I meant for us
For
to be able,
us.
to be able to share with the community. Maybe if we had the breakdown.
Breakdown of like specific calls.
Do you have categories?
Yeah.
Calls,
Uh,
service
Yeah, we
types.
can break
Yeah.
down some
I
types.
think that might be useful for people to
That'd
be
be
able
really
to see.
interesting, yeah.
I mean, back in the day, we used to have like 10 or 15 part-timers that would come in and help. And I think we're down to 2 that haven't worked in over a year, so.
So you have no part-timers
Yeah,
there.
not active.
Well, that's the exact same story as the fire department with their call department.
So, I mean, that's how they used to get away with it, but not in this one anymore.
Yeah, and that would have defrayed a lot of that mental load because you're spreading it across a lot more human beings.
That's all I got.
Very interesting. Yes, thanks. Thank you for getting the data. Thank you, Ted, for prepping some of that.
You guys have anything else for us?
Well, it gives us a better picture.
It does. It does.
Pretty.
I have nothing else for the police department this evening.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan, you've got a couple items from Pemmy Baker Television. How are you?
Doing well yourself?
Good.
So a couple of things for the agenda. Since taking over on June 20th as the station manager, just going through the policies and procedures, noticed that were some things that were out of date, like the channel numbers, they haven't been updated. Last revision was 2017. So throughout the document, changed the channels from 3 and 20 to 1301 and 1302 for your guys' approval. In addition, looking to up the membership cost just a little bit for individuals, going from $25 for the basic plan to $30, so a $5 raise on that to help offset some costs for production. And then the plus side in our document for membership application going from 40 to 50. The difference of each of these is the basic plan, you get membership for a year, slide creation if you need our help. The basic you get 10, the plus you get 50 per year, and it's a calendar year from when you sign up. You also get the rights to the studio for promotional items as long as it's non-monetary. Also free video equipment loans, depending on what time you need. And also your production streamed on either 1301 or 1302, depending on what the content is. So we're looking to raise that up just a little bit to help offset our costs a little bit. And also, what's not in this document, but on our membership application, going for towns from 250 to 300 for the same reasons, for travel, for production, and for membership for their postings. So that's two of them. That's in section E on page 6.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it should be the second paragraph in there.
Eligibility.
Yes, eligibility. Is there any questions on any of that?
Okay, so the memberships you're talking about are for people
Correct.
who
That are
are
not-
outside of town but want to use the public access.
Correct.
Gotcha.
What was it before, or what was it before?
So the basic before was 25, so just moving that up 5, and then the plus was 40, moving that to 50.
How many members do we have?
I don't have actual data on that right now. I've been trying to search through the system and trying to find that, so right now, I don't really know, to be honest.
Do you have any, either you or Ann, do you have any, like, is it tens of members? Is
I would
it
say less than
hundreds?
10's individual, and then just Ashland currently as a town.
Okay. Okay, so we're talking small numbers.
Small
here.
numbers, yep.
Very small numbers here. Okay.
But again, looking to increase those numbers and promote ourselves and our studio more to the 10 communities that we stream to and try to get more interaction of our communities. So hopefully this will grow over the next couple of years.
If you were to pick up another town like Hampton or something like that, that means like a heck of a lot more work for you though, right? Or
Depends. So a lot of the individual stuff is user submitted, so we don't produce their content. If the town, which I know they do their own Zooms at Campton per se, we could work something out, but it's a lot of set up a camera, record if they don't want live. This is the only town we do live. We don't do Ashland live at the moment with their system that they have. But we can make anything work, and it's not too much more work.
would Ashland want to go live?
They're trying to. So they were originally, but with COVID and having to move They have an issue with their system that they purchased, so we just run the system for them. But technically, they're supposed to go live. It just doesn't work with their network right now, which we're trying to figure out. Other than that, the last thing, part of this document, is the removal of DVD recordings for content. Outdated technology. We haven't had a request in a few years. I think the last one, from what I can find on the records, was the high school graduation in 2020 with COVID. We haven't had one since then. So just the removal of that and just going with the digital content recordings, which is a $5 fee, which doesn't change. Persons brings in a thumb drive or external drive, and we copy it over. We can easily as well send out a download link through the internet and have them open the link and save the video onto their personal computer. So that's the real means right now of
Distribution,
data transfer.
yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
That covers Pemmy Baker's side of things. Is there any questions?
Just a question, so the preface, still, is that, a holdover, the Pemmy Baker Television Public Access Channel 20? Or is that the technical name for TV? Middle of the paragraph.
I probably missed that one. But that should be 1301, 1302.
What page are you on, Bill?
Preface,
Basically,
the
the
first
one
one.
against
Oh, very beginning.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the one that I have here, it is updated to 1302. It's just not on yours that was sent out last week. So
Okay,
it's just one I caught and haven't changed over. But yes, 1302.
all right.
While we had Kate Miller here, she mentioned HD broadcast. Is that something we should be requesting in our new agreement? Is that a pain in the butt for us? What's the
It would
story
be a
there?
pain in the butt. It would be, like she said, a ton of money to change over our server, our tower, the fiber optic line from town hall to the library, both ends of that. It would be a headache. As Kate said, a lot of people are cord cutting, so we can
Stuff we're
still-
streaming is that standard def or is it higher def?
high def.
Yeah.
Yep. So when
That's
we
what I
go, for instance, this meeting, when we put it up on YouTube right now, YouTube Live is 1080. We record, upload, and it will go out looking better quality, even though it's standard def on TV. But I'm waiting on a quote right now from our server provider in Castus. They're looking to give us a quote on what it would be to have what's called a portal page. So it's a destination other than YouTube, because YouTube's very sensitive with content when it's live, of hosting the stream. So people who didn't have cable can go to this portal page. It's just a URL address, it's a regular website, and can see what's live. It's not a on-demand video. It's actually what's going out over the cable network. So waiting on a quote from that, because I see that more of the way where this is going
Yeah.
in the
more of
next
that.
10, 15 years.
So the difference between like YouTube and the other thing you said is because, YouTube is like what, like a 15, 20 second?
No, you can do live. I know NASA has a live channel. WMUR has a separate channel that they have a lot of content that they post that's live 24/7. I believe the NASA channel started in 2008 and has been running straight through ever since. We tried to do a test last week. It got flagged for a violation of their content. It's just, I disputed it, but to no avail, really. It's just our content going out there, but they didn't like that for some reason. So that's why they're very sensitive. And if we go with Cassis, depending on what the cost is and approval, probably not this year, if not built into the budget for next year.
The unfortunate part about something like Castos, though, is you take a cord cutter who has a YouTube app on their TV. Very easy for them to pull up a live stream off a YouTube app. Very complicated for them to pull up a live stream off a.
Not necessarily, because they have what's called OTT. So
I understand, but you're getting into something that's going to be very technical and a lot more complicated for a 65-year-old
Correct.
person who just wants to watch the board meeting.
exactly, and that's why I don't feel that putting the money into HD is the right fit for the channel and for the town and for this board, is to keep it where it is, continue to grow the content, and then offset that with the digital age and get that. middle to younger market involved some more.
So the board should accept the
Yes.
changes to this.
Make a motion to accept Dan's changes to the Penny Baker Television Manual of Policies and Procedures.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so you said the last time it was done is like 2017?
Yeah, so the 7th edition is August on the second page here, August 2017. There's no notes on that from what was given to me. So I'm just looking to update that since coming on board.
I remember reviewing that and making the changes, and it doesn't seem like 5 years ago.
Well,
How long has Andrew been with us? Because Jules brought it to you.
Yeah, with
we
you,
haven't
yeah,
voted, but
yeah.
I signed.
Oh, Andrew's been here 7 years, right? Or
Yeah, and he
has
ran
been.
it for a couple. I think it was around 2019, 2020 when
Jules left.
she left, and that's
2020.
when the cable company changed from channel 3 and 20 to 1301 and 1302. It just
Okay.
wasn't amended in our documents.
Time flies.
Any more discussion?
Quick question on the front. Should it say in cooperation with Charter Communications and not Spectrum?
Probably.
Isn't Spectrum still the local?
Yeah, I don't know if it has to be their parent company.
Spectrum's, yeah, still the what they call it locally, what they market as.
Yep.
So then there's only the one change to channel 20 and channel 1301.
So there is a bunch, everything that says 1301 and 1302 in the document was changed, except for that one that you guys have, which
So
I
we'll
got.
fix that. We'll put this in the board, the corrected
Correct.
version for board signatures.
Yes, it's just that one change on that first page.
Or you can steal our signature page and just staple it in if you'd like.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Sounds good. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. Second thing, looking at Facebook, I know that the select board has a page, and looking to what I've already created, but it's unpublished, a Town of Plymouth Facebook page that will be a host for all department pages. Now, departments like mine with Pemmy Baker will still post our own individual items, but we can then share that to one page and have it as a good bulletin board, a digital bulletin board for the community, for the local businesses to keep people informed, especially with the project downtown starting next year. It's just a way that I've seen work for Campton as a kind of a model, because that is where I'm a resident of. And they have it set up where it's just a bulletin board. No one can comment on anything.
Who posts to it?
Right now, it's just me. Again, it's not published, so no one can see the page.
Yeah, no, I meant Campton's.
They're town elected officials.
Because we've always had that hesitancy here is that technically anything we write has to be pre-agreed on, consensus, right to know. So we've been very hesitant even on our own board page. All we do is republish it. We have an automatic integration set up with the website so that when a blog post gets posted, it just pushes to the select board page
Which
so that
actually there's been
we
an
aren't-
issue with.
Oh, is it broke?
It's been broken. I don't
Oh, we
have
should fix it.
access to that
You want me
page.
to give you access to it? Take that as a to-do.
So we can get that reconnected, but right now it's not connected to the website.
Oh, okay.
So this would
I
kind
didn't
of,
realize that had broken.
this could, I guess it happened in February, so well before I've come on board. I've
Nobody
been trying to
mentioned
rectify
it.
that. But this would kind of be a replacement of that.
So would we change that connection to go to the town page instead of
Yep, so anything from the website will go there.
there instead?
And then,
Good.
All departments.
well, what we can do is when the department posts something, we can then share it to the town page, and then everyone can find it there as well. So if people wanted to comment, they would have to
Admittedly,
go
I'm
to
not sure the
original post.
select if we do that, I'm not sure the select board needs a page. I mean, our page was really
Yeah.
Right away.
a proxy for
Yeah.
the town having a page. I don't think there was anything special about us having a page.
Except, yeah, unless people want to gripe on, but,
Right.
you know.
Well, they wanna
give
yell
them a
at us.
chance. Yeah,
And again,
Go
that's,
ahead, let 'em.
being the way it's set up, people cannot comment on it.
right.
So it's just a way to get information out to the community. They can comment on it if they like to go to, if Pemmy Baker shares something on, or if it gets pulled onto that page.
Mm-hmm.
If they go to the original item if it's set up that way, they can comment on it. So if the highway department had a Facebook page and posted a update on a construction work and had the rights available to that, people can comment there. But through the town page itself, no commenting will be available.
It sounds good, but you may have some jurisdictional issues. I mean,
Yeah.
the town clerk has their own, site, which they may have an issue pushing to this site, and also probably like, water and sewer, may have an issue too,
But I mean, they're still posting on their own stuff,
but
and
whether or not.
Yes,
you-
if we can
you
pull it
grab
over,
Yeah, but,
we would have to get approval probably.
I would say keep pushing.
Okay.
It sounds lovely. We've always wanted more there, and I think if you're excited about doing it, you should. That's
Yeah.
my 2 cents.
I agree.
but you have to be excited about it, though.
Yeah, you have to be excited about it. And admittedly, I'm not even opposed to the comments, despite them being, 75% negative. I don't know. It's an outlet. People get a chance to say a thing.
And we can easily make
Water
that
off a
change.
duck's back for me.
Unless they expect a response
Right,
from their
right.
comments. and-
Well, but at the same time, if and we don't have a process for this, but if somebody was, if Dan was monitoring this and somebody was asking a question of the board, we could discuss it at a meeting, right? I mean, it's not going to be immediate online from us, but
You have a disclaimer on the page.
yeah.
It says, hey, we may not respond right away.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or
Anyway.
issues might be taken up.
Yeah, it
during
might be taken up during
meetings and
board
not
meetings,
on-
which happen on Monday nights and town
Please come.
hall, and please attend or watch the stream, or we'll follow up. I don't know. Anything that, more participatory democracy, I'm all for it.
All right. I will ask around the departments and see if they have any approval and report back.
It seems like the police is often the department that takes it on the chin on Facebook the most, so you may get the most hesitancy from that group. Anything else for Dan?
No, I'm good.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for streaming for us, too.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
I think we just slighted Frank, though. I mean, he does participate in everything, so.
Sure, but he's the sole participatory.
Yep.
Anne, revised encumbrance request.
So I just wanted to report to the board that we have done a revision to the encumbrance request from 2122 to 2223, and that number is now $1,489,360.16. And I asked the board to make a motion to accept that revised amount from here.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the revised amount for the encumbrance.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thanks, Anne. Appreciate you preparing us for expenses to come.
Yeah.
Before we wrap, we had this letter in our box that we had discussed, it feels like a month ago, from Jesse. And when I read it, I had a question. And I know Jesse's not here, but I think that collectively, hopefully someone remembers. But the last sentence in this letter says, the select board has decided to increase the cost to all commercial and nonprofit entities that deliver mattresses to the Plymouth Recycling Center from other towns at the rate of yada, yada, yada. Jesse was pretty clear that legally no one could bring things from other towns. So I thought we were just saying the select board has decided to increase the cost for people who deliver mattresses to the recycling center.
No. He's talking about commercial haulers.
But no one can bring things to the town.
Yeah. Well, not haulers, but we have two, businesses in town.
Furniture
Businesses,
stores.
right, commercial business.
Sometimes they're for
All
people in
commercial and non-profit entities, which is, we were increasing the cost for commercial and non-profit entities, but I didn't think we could say from other towns because we legally cannot take, we can't set a fee of $80 for mattresses from other towns when we legally can't take mattresses from other towns?
If you're a business though, you know, and you just, sold a mattress to someone in Camden, and you picked up their,
Yep,
they
so now
want,
you have bought their mattress,
Yep.
you are in town, and you possess their mattress,
and they want to get rid of it.
but
So
that
then it
mattress
should-
isn't from another town. That mattress is from you, a business that resides in this town that we can legally accept. We can't accept it from the other town.
However, people that sell mattresses in town have invoices of someone in Camden that they picked a mattress up from. That business, you know, is in town and not in Camden. So they'd be bringing that mattress to Plymouth and paying the $80 or whatever. But if it was like a Plymouth resident, it would be the normal, Jesse fee.
I understand the distinction you're making. I am not going to sign this letter because I don't believe we can legally make that distinction.
I also remember that the matter of us making an amendment to our agreement is $100
Yes, and that Jesse was intending to submit that paperwork.
and submitting the paperwork.
Yes. Well, I don't know if he has submitted that
I
paperwork.
have no idea.
Jim is working on looking at our current application to see what we can do about amending our current licensing.
So I guess the question.
So we're going to set a fee that is not allowed by our licensing.
Who owns that mattress once it comes back into Plymouth?
Well, that's I guess what the point we're just saying. I'm thinking the business, basically
Right, I would
took
think
possession of that,
Yes.
and
Right.
and he's passing that fee on to the person in Campton who we sold the mattress to. So I think it seems kind of clean,
Basically, commercial haulers or
Oh,
commercial businesses will be paying more to get rid of their mattresses.
If they came from out of town.
Yep.
So, but Jim is going to be taking a look at,
Yes.
either the appropriateness or legalities or whatever of.
He is looking at the current license that we have at the recycling center.
Okay.
But we have been keeping him running
Yeah.
on several other different issues that we've had going on, so.
So I think the question you're asking is, should we wait on this?
I think we should either wait on it or set the fee at $80 for mattresses, period. And not run into a legality issue.
I disagree. I think we can make that distinction from like Plymouth, commercial, Plymouth mattresses from someone that resides in Plymouth being
Get
picked
the
up by a
Plymouth
company.
discount? It's a
Yeah.
discounted rate.
Essentially, yeah. For those residents in Plymouth that buy a new mattress and their Plymouth mattress is going to the Plymouth dump recycling center versus someone in Campton and that company can actually up the fee when they sell the mattress in Campton to accommodate the $80 fee or $100 fee or whatever Jesse's going to up it to. Do you want to make a motion just to hold off until the investigation or the Jim's look at what's appropriate is complete?
I would be more comfortable with that.
Okay.
I also don't know how overwhelmed the recycling center currently is with out-of-town mattresses.
They have a lot of mattresses.
Do they have? Because effectively, what's happening is it's costing the taxpayers money every time one of these comes in. Are we seeing dozens of them a week? Are we seeing one a month? I just don't have a context for what the volume is here.
We can put Jim on the next agenda. I know that he did want to speak to the board anyways.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
would that,
That would be
you
lovely.
just hold off on that
Yeah,
until the next
I'll
meeting?
hold. I mean, technically, it has a majority signature, and we discussed it previously, but I didn't like the wording.
Okay. All right, so we'll have him come in.
You want this back?
Yep.
Send it back. Committee reports. Water and sewer.
No? We have a meeting tomorrow?
Planning Board, Neil?
We had a planning board meeting on July 7th. John Christ is the chair. We had a quorum. We had discussion of site plan review regulations, and they discussed EV charging stations, invasive species, inspecting gravel pits, stormwater regulations are being drafted with the input from Mike McNally. There's a new law just went into effect, signed by the governor. It was House Bill 1661. It's a summary of the key changes to planning and zoning procedures. ZBA or planning board members and alternates are not required to attend training, but training is provided free of charge from the state. All fees must be posted in a location accessible to the public during normal business hours. It can be posted on a town website or at town hall. If a municipality allows density or other bonuses to housing for older persons, such bonuses may also be applied to workforce housing. If the Land Use Board denies an application, the notice of decision shall include specific written findings of fact that support the decision, in addition to written reasons for the denial. Otherwise, the denial can be overturned. The ZBA has 90 days to approve or disapprove an application from the date of acceptance. If it's complete, the board may deny without prejudice, which allows for a later resubmittal of the same application. Planning board still has 65 days to act or approve or deny an application unless the applicant agrees to waive the timeline and the board and applicant agree upon an extension timeline. If the board doesn't act, the select board shall certify that the application is approved. If sufficient information is not provided in time, the board may deny the application without prejudice, allowing the same or similar application to be resubmitted at a later day. There were some minor changes made to Superior Court appeals and rehearings, and there was some minor changes made to municipal economic development and revitalization districts, allowing municipalities to utilize these districts for a wider variety of housing-related activities, including acquisition of property to construct workforce housing. We've already got workforce housing in Plymouth. This was really a work session. We didn't have any applications. The criteria for variance needs to be updated. We need more flexible criteria for special exceptions in family dwellings. There was considerable discussion about people having roosters in the village zone, and manure, and I guess you call it livestock. There was a discussion about changing the building height, parking problems, building height on commercial buildings in the commercial district, parking problems. That's been ongoing all my life. Form-based codes, village commercial zone is an active area of concern. July 29th is the timeline for the State of New Hampshire, Plan New Hampshire Municipal Assistance for Zoning regarding housing. And they need public input. Stormwater Asset Management Plan, culverts. Next regular board meeting is August 4th. It's canceled. Nobody wants to go. They don't have any applications, so they're gonna have a summer day off.
That sounds
That's
nice.
pretty much everything I could glean out of it.
Thanks, Neil. Campus Community Council delayed till fall.
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Marlon. He suggested doing one in August, so
Oh, okay.
reach out to him.
Time to get that rolling. I'm sure the landlords and stuff would be appreciative of some conversation about back to school and all that kind of thing. School district, nothing from elementary.
Nothing from high school either.
Conservation Commission, back to you, Neil.
We haven't had a meeting since the 21st of June, so I gave you a report on the last meeting.
Good. When do they meet again?
Pardon?
When does Conservation Commission meet again?
About the third week of July.
Third week, okay. No. Oh, the the Capital Improvement Committee. There's two mixed here, but we did not meet last week. We're struggling to find a revised meeting time. There hasn't been any progress on that this week, has there?
I have
It's
a
only
meeting
Monday.
tomorrow with June and Joseph
Okay.
to just look to see where we are, see where we're going from here.
Okay. Sounds good. LRPC had our annual meeting
We did. In Franklin.
in Franklin.
How was
The
that?
Wasn't that a
Yeah.
picnic?
it was
Evening picnic,
Sort
yeah.
of.
evening under the tent dinner. Yeah, it was good. It was interesting to hear the gentleman from that's been working on the Mill City Park project
Yeah.
speak about his experience on that project and the revitalization that it's bringing to Franklin.
It's quite the success, and there's a lot of, good things happening downtown, and I don't think it's single-handedly doing it, but
No, but it's a piece of that overall puzzle that's raising Franklin up.
Franklin's really coming ahead.
yeah.
They are. Yeah, they're coming back.
You know, I'm really seeing, I went to a conference in Franklin and I was really impressed with what's happening there.
Yeah. Anything else out of that?
Oh, we were talking about the question, or you were talking about the housing questionnaire. So LRPC was kind of like a point, well, RPCs were like point agencies to try to get these questionnaires out and get a lot of information back. And it seems like, from what they were saying, it seemed, there's a lot of, not too much, participation. And it just doesn't seem like it's been well done. It's just big shotgun approach about like, you can resubmit your questionnaire 50 times if you'd like, and it just seems like there's a real potential to skew any kind of data, and it's not based on a real good approach, I don't think. But anyway, hopefully there's something good that comes out of it. But
Anything else about LRPC?
Nope.
Parks and Rec?
Last I knew that they were still planning a meeting sometime during the summer, but it has not been announced to me.
Okay. Parking?
So actually, I did have a meeting. Biggest concern was from Amanda, I forget her last name, new postmaster, concerned with parking for her staff. I think they have 4 spots up at Pease, but they have to walk down, can be a little bit dangerous. I had to leave early, I had another appointment. I'm not sure, there was talk of, right on the corner of the post office on Highland Street, I think there are 3 spots there that when I'd left, Bush Chief was here, that discussion was a possibility. The
What's that?
concern was, what about the other businesses?
Right.
You know,
It's not like any of the other businesses have off-street parking.
correct,
Yeah.
correct, exactly. So I'm not sure, I'll find out from the chief, report back. But
Where that
was
landed?
left, yeah.
Yeah.
So where is their parking? Where is their parking currently?
They were
Them and
parking on the
horses?
street. So they had Ps, but it was easier for everybody to park on the street, go out and feed the meter.
Yeah, okay.
They can't do that anymore. Some of their parking, when the trucks leave, they'll move into that area where the trucks park. It's a bad location for the post office anyway. I guess the building's in terrible condition. The trucks constantly run over the curb. I think there are Jersey barriers there now for when they back in, but a lot of the drivers are fairly inexperienced with doing that. So I guess there was talk before, Amanda mentioned talk before about, Tenny Mountain Highway type of area. I'm not sure where the feedback came, but I think people like that it's in town. I think it's more aesthetic than
Yeah.
it's not really that easy to get in and out. So, like I said, I'll have to find out where it was left.
Well, hopefully they're having conversations with Mike McGinley. See if maybe
Yeah,
if they can get located on their
Right.
their
On
thing
his
there.
new,
Yeah.
Right.
it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Then a business could go in on that corner.
Yeah, maybe. Building's in bad shape, I guess.
They,
Really bad shape.
they had funding,
It's an old brick building.
they had
Everything's fixable.
funding to build a new post office. And the money was taken away when the anthrax crisis happened.
Oh,
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they just took their money.
wow.
Because there was a place in Pennsylvania that got totally ruined by anthrax.
I did ask Grace Garvey about the EV charging station. So she reached out to Jack Green, who we met before. No one has heard, so his response was, no one's heard from the state yet, and they don't have a time frame for when the decision has come out. So we don't know when, I'm assuming not if, but when there'll be a charging station put in.
Okay. No, Economic Development Committee is still in hibernation. Energy Commission?
We, Grace sent out a letter to, emailed everybody on the committee that we did, the board approved MOU with, what's the BP? Barrington Power. And we're gonna have the next meeting on, I think this Wednesday, or maybe Thursday. I haven't seen a real, good invitation on that one, but to discuss Barrington Power's first steps with, that MOU. So, that's pretty much it.
Advisory Budget Committee?
Nothing.
Any movement on the Village Water Sewer Town Infrastructure Committee?
That's not mine. Whose is it?
We don't even know what committee that is.
Right.
Every week they take a
Came
different shot.
from.
Yeah.
I'm not,
I think it's Mary Ann.
I know it
Well, I
was,
report back on the discussion, but not the details of the infrastructure.
it was a committee that was added to this when Plymouth Village Water and Sewer and the town started working together on South Main Street and Highland Street projects for future, when highway has something going on and water and sewer has something in the same
Yeah.
place. They work together, but they don't have anything,
That committee is not actually meeting, or that committee is
not
not
at the
actually
moment, no.
standing?
Should it be a committee or just like, not a gentleman's agreement, but,
Right, a
between,
conversation.
between highway and,
Well, it was, but it was brought up at one of the meetings.
yeah, okay.
And I think Neil showed an interest in being on it at that time, but.
I think you
you're-
weren't here, and then you guys.
oh, I was the guy behind the tree, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so let's strike that from this going
We'll
forward.
take it off.
And while we're striking things, can we fix the capital improvement subcommittee and remove the advisory budget committee from that line item?
Already done.
It's something I'd like to add that the planning board decided they wanted to do. And they want to collaborate with the Energy Commission and the Conservation Commission so that they're on the same page.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Should PERLAC be on here? I mean, it's
Um,
not like an official.
Every
town thing,
every
but-
town should have a PERLAC group. You know, so it could be on here. I don't see why it wouldn't be.
We should put it in here so that we check in on it.
I'm no longer chair though, but
Okay, you
no,
still
that'd
participate.
be,
You don't
that'd be
know
a good
anything?
idea.
I thought you were the secretary.
I'm the secretary, yeah, so I.
You
it's
should
just-
know. You should
Exactly.
know everything.
Well, on
So-
that note, what's going on with
We're
PERLAC?
having a PERLAC meeting. It's coming up, well, it's the last Tuesday of every month. And also tomorrow morning, we're going to do a Volunteer River Assessment Program, VRAP,
Oh,
where we're going to be dragging out buckets of water from Plymouth and Campton, and
I like doing that, but I don't have time.
I'd like to say the same, but I get stuck. So, yeah, tomorrow at 8, we're going to be meeting at, our bridge, and you'll see me throwing buckets over. So, which is actually, it's very useful for DES, and they rely on the LACs to do their work for them. So,
good.
and there's actually a lot going on as far as like Thornton, and there's a couple of developments going on up there. One is the addition of another 26 or 32 camping sites at Penny River Campground in
Still
Thornton.
going at that, huh?
Yep, and they're going before their planning board, I guess this Wednesday. I think that's when they have the planning board meeting, and it's a rather inappropriate project. They should not put any more campgrounds in the flood zone, which they've been doing. And they also take advantage of going over the railroad tracks to get to these new campsites. And you shouldn't cross the tracks, and it's also a safety issue if and when, the big flood comes, and they got like 26, or actually probably like 50 or 100 people on the other side of the tracks. So, anyway, and also for safety vehicles to get in there. But that's one of them.
Last, not your jurisdiction.
Not my jurisdiction, but it's ours to comment on.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't hear about it until one of the abutters, who lives mostly in Florida, sent me a heads up today. So we'll be bringing it before our meeting. So interesting stuff, though, comes out of PERLAC.
Public comments.
Yes. Frank Miller on various committees, but parking. I just talked to the police chief as he left, dealing with the parking spaces for the post office. And I actually come here to stand in support of granting those 3 spaces to the post office. But he is waiting for the letter from the postmaster to officially get the request into the system. A little background on the Plymouth Post Office. Several years ago, the post office was trying to relocate the distribution center part of this post office to another up on Route 3, just across from the police department. But people misunderstood it, the request, not realizing, and they weren't going to take away the local post office for the local residents. They were only going to take away the distribution portion of it, and that's why we're having problems with all the interface with the big trucks. If that were moved out to Tenny Mountain or wherever new location, we'd only have the truck that would come in for the Plymouth Post office here, and you'd only have the 3 people that would be running this building for the Plymouth customers. You would not have the distribution portion of it. And that's why we have 4 spaces up at the library, but with the number of people and the shifts, we need those extra spaces. And these are right next to the post office.
and not necessarily connected with the view of the fact that around the common is what the business community is using for customer parking. So that's just a little bit of what I've seen over the years. Another comment, next year when we do go into the South Main Street construction, I have been trying to get mark 22 spaces down on Green Street at the end of the senior center. I had measured them out. I have a sprayer, and I was going to do it on a Sunday, but it's a case I don't know if the senior center owns that property or if it's the highway department owns the property. Obviously, it's not mine, but I had, in trying to move forward with the disruption of the employee parking that's going to be on South Main Street, I'm looking to see what we can do ahead of time to relocate or have a place for that disturbance of parking, along with the fact I have been actively involved with the landowners trying to get that last piece of property, the intersection of Railroad Street, Unnamed Way, and 5 Points, that would allow the town to apply to the state to get a crossing of the railroad tracks to Green Street. This has been an ongoing program for 40 years now. Two things. The state has sent letters to the town indicating that they would like to see that means of getting Route 3 traffic should something happen on 93 where they shut down and they have to divert all that traffic to Plymouth up Route 3, and rather than having it come through Main Street, be able to get it bypassed. And also our own work here, if something is to happen during construction where they have to shut down that process, there's no means of bypassing the traffic. It'd have to go Crawford Street or Parker Street through a residential area, which would be a great major impact to our law enforcement. But designing and looking at the ultimate plan out of the downtown or village commercial zone, Green Street was recognized to be our second main street. And to try to appropriately funnel and direct traffic that's not necessarily going to Main Street businesses but just passing through, it's the least way of interrupting our normal Main Street business. So I don't know where the various boards or committees, as far as what we can do, one, temporarily realign parking for our employees, and where the town is at on us getting that last piece of right-of-way that would allow us to get to put in an application. I went down to Concord Transportation to see what the process was, to see if there was anything I could do as a citizen, and they indicated that the only person had the authority for that would be the select board. And I said, okay, but it seems to me we've been talking about a setback and just getting that right-of-way that's so it's designed in accordance with safety protocols for intersections, and then allowing even if a temporary crossing material would be in place so that when we get into construction and we have to shut down, say at Warren Street, well, the traffic has got to go someplace, and we need to pre-plan. To me, this is the time to do that. And that's, as a public citizen, I'm interested in, I did the parking inventory and on all these other studies we've done. I've got a lot of data and information, but it's not mine and I can't move on it. So, thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks.
I mean, I'll say that I totally agree with Frank. I think if we've talked about that space for, well, 40 years, I guess. And, you know, if the Main Street project was something we could use as an impetus to get our right-of-way there, get a railroad any of that stuff, we have this little, I don't know, gift maybe of a 9-month delay on this project. You know, maybe we can spin that into a positive down there.
You probably would want to speak to, or have June come speak to that as well.
Yeah.
Because I know when they were talking about where we're going to store equipment during this whole process, where we're going to store potential material during this whole process, that may be an area that they are planning on using. It was my understanding that the skate park may be shut down for a year, which means that entire area should not be entered because the equipment and whatnot that's going in there. But that may be a consideration.
Let's get June here for the next meeting to
Okay.
talk about that space. Frank, do you have some more thoughts?
That roadway from the skateboard park is still called unnamed way. So if we do anything else, we could turn around and put no name road. But the fact that it has no name, and of course, when I talk to the fire chief, they know where it's at to respond. But technically, anything else goes in there would have a location of an unnamed way and no numbering system. So
Yeah.
that's another item on that area.
Well, that is it for the public agenda this evening.
Okay, I'll make a motion to go into non-public accordance to RSA 91-A:3 2A. Personnel.
I'll second.
Neil, your vote.
Aye.
Marianne? Aye. Zach? Aye. Bill?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
And we're in non-public as soon as Dan tells us we're safe.